Lebanon has just submitted filmmaker Ziad Doueiri's newest film, The Insult, to compete at next year's Oscars in the Best Foreign Film category. This comes as the movie won the Volpi Cup Award for Best Lead Actor at the Venice Film Festival for Kamel El-Basha's portrayal of Palestinian refugee Yasser Salemi, starring opposite Adil Karam's Tony Hanna, who plays an auto mechanic, in this courtroom drama about an offense blown out of proportion.
أي حقيقة توني؟ ما تخلي شغلة صغيرة مثل هيدي تخرب كل شيء.
تفضل. أنا مني يسوع المسيح لحتى أبرم له خد التاني.
As in all of Doueiri's films, The Insult invites controversy, and this time with a quest for justice, both on-screen and, ironically, off-screen. We met Doueiri just a few moments after charges were dropped against him when he was detained and faced a military court for filming part of his 2012 movie, The Attack, in Israel, a country that Lebanon maintains no diplomatic relations with and bans its citizens from visiting. Recently, when they asked you, after winning the award, how you felt about Lebanon and The Insult, and you said that The Insult reconciled you with Lebanon in a way. And the biggest gift was that it was going to be screened because you mentioned how your last movie, The Attack, was banned from here. After the events that happened, are you still okay with this reconciliation?
I am okay with the reconciliation with certain things because I saw after the trial, the military tribunal and the arrest that happened yesterday, I saw how many people actually root for the film and for me, who came to my defense, that always remind you that you can't give up on the fight. Am I totally okay with it? No, I'm not totally okay. I'd be lying to you if I tell you I'm totally okay with it. The attack against me were so vicious, were so low. And you say, how could something come out like that from Lebanon?
You didn't expect any of it?
I expected, but not to that degree. You always expect reactions, but not filthy reactions.
And then 5 years later, actually.
It could have been 1 day later or 5 days later or 10 years later. It doesn't matter. It keeps coming back. I mean, we know today why certain groups, they are trying to create that problem. Not because of the attack. The attack is 5 years ago. And they got what they wanted. The film got banned. It's because they don't want me to release my new film.
They don't want to see you succeed.
They don't want to see the film succeed because it doesn't correspond to their way of thinking. The film talks about certain things that doesn't please them.
This movie, you've said before, raises the issues of justice, and calling for justice is also calling for dignity. And to reach that, these characters, they have to face these internal and external challenges and overcome them. And the two leading protagonists are affected by their past, and they find it difficult to accept one another. Do you believe that the message of understanding and not necessarily accepting the other will resonate with the audience to understand one another?
I think it will resonate because I chose a subject that is simple to understand. It's not a complicated subject. It's complex in the psychology, but I think the Lebanese, the Palestinian, some of the other Arabs might be able to relate to all the details than, let's say, Americans or French or English, which their reaction was also very positive. I think the idea of understanding is something that I grappled with. It's something that I had to also deal with. Do you understand the other point of view?
Your background was a big source of inspiration in writing this film.
You can say it as an
what
inspiration.
You've been through, let's put it that way.
I've been through what lots of Lebanese went through. The co-screenwriter, Joelle, has also gone through what we went through, except that I was living in West Beirut, she was living in East Beirut. So we come from opposite camps. My camp had certain belief about her camp and vice versa. We thought we were righteous, we were right, and they were in the wrong. They also believed that we were in the wrong and they were right.
How do you feel about the critiques that say you show a bias in The Insult?
I love critiques.
No, but the ones that say you show a bias towards one or the other?
I am biased.
It felt like you went to great length to show them on equal footing.
Because I like my characters and I put them on equal footings because they are two similar characters, but I am biased.
So you're okay with the critiques saying you're biased?
Absolutely.
Biased towards whom?
I have certain sympathy to certain...
Does it shift?
It shifts. It goes back and forth. My biggest bias is toward filmmaking.
Okay, not towards one of the characters.
I have a tendency to relate to the character of the lawyer the most, the male lawyer played by Kamel Salemi. I wrote his lines and then I rewrote them after the attack was banned.
Okay.
I reworked the dialogue because I was attacked by certain people, and then I used his dialogue and reformatted them, rewrote them to defend, or not to defend, but to counter-attack, actually.
Rita Hayek, who played Tony's wife Shireen, said that her character is the voice of reason, calming him down, allowing him to break out of his shell. The women in your movie, the insults, seem to be the ones that are diffusing the tension. Was it a conscious decision to cast women in roles of strength, such as Nadine, Yasser's lawyer, played by Diamant Abou Aboud, and Julia Assad as the star judge?
You see, was it a conscious decision?
Conscious decision, especially when women in Lebanon still struggle for equality.
Yeah, it is 100% a conscious decision. We did it because Joelle and I believe that women ought to have a better voice, that women are smart in Lebanon, they can do better, and we believe that, you know, the more female characters are stronger, the more it might make people think about it. I think it was important to have very strong female characters in this film because they are the ones who create the equilibrium among two males that are very extremist.
And hot-headed.
And hot-headed and stubborn and ego and perfectionist at the same time, and humane and very dignified. I have a lot of dignity in my characters.
It's interesting because you mentioned Joelle Touma, your co-writer, and recently, Venice, you said that you enjoyed writing the script of The Insult with your now ex-wife Joelle Touma, who you've been working with for the past 10 years, if only because it provided a distraction from the divorce you were both going through. Is this movie a more personal one for you because of the events happening behind the scenes? How did what you were going through add to this experience?
It is a very personal film for me and very personal film for Joelle. It's personal because at the very beginning, it started with a real incident that happened to me when I was living on Shara Mono, on Mono Street in Beirut. It started spilled water, just like in the movie, and then there was a little bit of a verbal dispute with a guy, and then I find out that he was Palestinian, and then I threw an insult. That's how it started. So if you want to say personal, the trigger point of the story was like this. But it's more personal because it is the sum of everything that I lived through from my childhood, ever since the war started, and everything that Joelle lived through. When you sit down and you write a screenplay, you talk about analyzing your character. We knew it so well. I knew the character so well. I knew what the lawyer was saying. I knew what the contest. It was so instinctive. We didn't think about it. It just came out because we had such a knowledge of the subject. Joelle comes from Bikfaya, the capital of the Uwait. This is where Bashir Gemayel came. And I come from West Beirut, where my mom nursed me, gave me her breast, feeding me the Palestinian cause. That's all I grew up in. Always the Palestinian cause, always the Palestinian cause. So Joelle and I come from very diametrically opposed.
The going through a divorce must be hard. Did that affect, or did you feel that it added something because of whatever tension personally you were feeling, both of you? Maybe?
We were going through, Joelle and I were going through a divorce, but it had nothing to do with the story. It just happens that we were writing while we were getting a divorce. So it did not add any tension. To the opposite, it kind of distracted us from the divorce because it was actually a pretty friendly divorce. So it's just, I said that at Venice Film Festival because I remembered it that we were enjoying the writing process, that it kind of like minimized
It
the
smoothened
pain. It smoothened the awkwardness and the pain from divorce.
You've worked with a writer-director yourself. You know, you assisted Quentin Tarantino on some of his films, and you have written and you have directed. Do you have one that you prefer, writing or directing, one that you enjoy more?
I like both of them. I mean, I do direct projects that are not mine because it makes you also think of trying different technique, try different...
But even then, you adapted the screenplay. You adapted from the
Yes, I
book.
mean, I'm doing a series for Canal Plus right now
Noir.
also, which was written by somebody else, and it's fine, it's totally fine. Directing is a huge work, it's a huge exercise. It's an exercise where you try shots, you try angles, you try to create moods. But at the bottom line, it's always better to write and direct for me because it allows me to master the subject 100%. I have a total control of it.
This stood out. There are many iconic cities in the world that become a character in films, like New York for Taxi Driver or Amélie for Paris.
Yes.
Even though Lebanon is a country, not a city, do you feel it became a character in The Insult?
Totally. Beirut is like a kick-ass town. It's dense. It's very visual to film.
But it was also Lebanon.
It's yeah. I mean, when you talk about Beirut, you're talking about the whole country. The psyche is about the whole country, not just about Beirut. But I chose the setting in Beirut because it's so visually interesting. Because I'm a city guy. I like big cities. I don't like villages that much, visually speaking, to direct. I like to live in a city, and I thought that the center of the story must happen in a big city, in Beirut.
Do you think we tell the story of the country through its people?
Absolutely. We are telling the story of Lebanon. We're telling my story. We're telling Joelle's story. We're telling Bashir Jmaile's story. We're telling we have a very intense story. The attack that are being waged against the insult right now are because of the country.
Our stories and our history. Speaking story and history.
Yeah.
The Lebanese seem to have built a love-hate relationship with Lebanon. Do you believe it's possible to move forward from this with the new generation? And how do we do this? How do we move forward from this?
You're talking about a social movement. I'm talking about the craftsmanship of movie making. I'm a filmmaker.
But you get people to think socially. Right, but you get people,
I get people to think, but this is not the purpose why I go to do a movie. Believe me, when we sit down to write a film and direct a film, not because we want to do social changes. It's too much to ask from
It's a lot of pressure, of course. But what if it does generate social change,
That's good.
movies?
If it does generate, let it generate. I don't think usually filmmaker and films affect society that much. How many times we've seen movies, we cried, you felt so much for the characters, and then you go out and you don't do what you thought you would be doing when you were watching the movie. So many times you say, oh my God, I've been in that situation. I'm going to try not to do that mistake. You go out of the movie theater, you do that mistake again. Movies affect you to a certain degree. But for me, my films is not to create social changes. Now, if it's the aftermath, if it's the indirect result, okay, ليش لا? But believe me, it's not my purpose.
Do you think it is possible to make a movie without these kinds of things? In Lebanon, it's kind of difficult. It's kind of the fabric of what consists us.
Yes, because Lebanese are also very attached to images and also very attached to their history, and we're still like a little kid. We are still almost too spontaneous. Even in the vicious attack, it's still spontaneous. I don't consider Lebanon as an intellectual country.
What do you consider it as when you think about it?
It's an intestinal country. It deals from here, from your gut, not from your brain, which is what makes my film probably interesting to make and show in Lebanon.
West Beirut. This is a movie that came out approximately, 20 years ago?
20 years ago.
What do you think of when you see this?
It's how it started, and I see the end way right now, like how it evolved from this to this. Yeah, I see that this is a direct product of that. I always write about what speaks to me. I don't write about what doesn't concern me. I have to be concerned with my characters, with my story. This is very autobiographical, and this is very autobiographical.
They were the two movies that you've completely written, whereas Leela Says and The Attack were adapted screenplays.
That's right.
Right. I must not, after yesterday and today. I actually printed this before the events. I'd like to put that out there.
What do you mean you must not? You can whatever you want.
But when you look at this now, today.
I am so proud of that movie. It is just something that I so much believed in that I was willing to take risks.
Could it have been filmed outside Tel Aviv and the Palestinian territories?
Could you have shot this in New York?
No.
Could you have shot this in Cairo?
No.
Okay, so this had to be done in Palestine, and it has to be done wherever I filmed it. This film is my film. It is something that I worked so hard on it, and unfortunately those who attacked it the most are the people who didn't see it. I would love it to be seen, and then let me be criticized and attacked after they see it. I don't mind.
Any last words for the Lebanese youth and the new generation watching, aspiring filmmakers?
It is probably to remain true to your guts if you want to write a film. Meaning, I'm very pragmatic about my way of movie making. You have to get out of school. When you get out of film school, don't jump into directing right away. You have to go by A, B, C, D, C, all the way to the end. That means you gotta first and foremost learn screenwriting and learn how to tell the story. I think this is how to tell a story. The biggest films are not about camera moves.
Who were your influencers growing up?
I have many influences, not one. But probably Ron Fricke is one of my biggest influences because he just created such an incredible visual art. And films like Koyaanis Katsi, like Baraka, like Kronos, like Samsara. These are incredible films that worked on me a lot because they're visually stunning. It's probably what made me want to start. But it's not only Ron Fricke. There are other filmmakers and there are other movies that I keep seeing over and over.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Having discussions, making way for dialogue seemed to be a way forward for Ziad Doueiri. In the insult, the language used and the subject matter, still considered taboo, prove once again that this filmmaker is not only a risk taker, but more importantly, a storyteller. A hopeful one. For the Lebanon he used to know, he says, is open and has always been a beacon among Arab countries and should remain as such.